Okay, we're going to review transformations of functions, and there's six basic transformations that you can apply to a function. Technically, you could probably classify it as four. We're going to break it into six. The first two are shifts. So vertical shifting, shifting it up or down. If we go from a function to the same function plus a value of c, if c is greater than zero, it's a shift up. Less than zero, it's a shift down. Horizontal shift. Now this is saying instead of x, I'm replacing x by x plus c. And now this is horizontals in general are kind of counterintuitive. If c is less than zero, it's a shift right. If c is greater than zero, it's a shift left. Um, so again, and you'll see that when we get to scalings too, it's kind of counterintuitive. But if it's negative right, positive left for horizontals. Vertical reflections. For a vertical reflection, the negative will be outside of the value. So this is saying take your y value to its opposite value. And so it's a reflection over the vertical, and this should be, yeah. Um, this should be over y is equal to 0. I don't know why I have that. So this should be y is equal to 0, and then horizontal reflection is over x is equal to 0. But horizontal reflection, you're taking the x value and switching its side, so you're flipping it if it's on the left side to the right side and vice versa. Scalings, this is again where it's a little counterintuitive with the horizontals, but verticals, if you're multiplying your y value by c, if c is positive, we say that's a vertical stretch by a factor of c. If it's between 0 and 1, then it's a shrink or compression. Again, we don't account for the negative because the negative is compensated for in the reflection piece. But so you can say stretch or compression, or if you want to leave it in general and just say vertical scaling by a factor of blah, that's fine too. Horizontal scalings, again, this is saying we take our x value and multiply it by c. But again, just as we saw c was positive was a stretch, which is intuitive because you take your y value and increase it by some amount. For horizontal, it's actually compression by a factor of 1 over c. Same thing in a stretch is if it's between 0 and 1. So it's a stretch by a factor of 1 over c. Okay. And I think, there's a couple examples in the notes that go through and talk about a horizontal scaling. Okay. Now, common question is, what is the order that we use with these? The suggestion, and these are not set in stone. You can certainly do a different set if you wish. I recommend to do the horizontals first. So that's do these right side transformations first, and then do the verticals. And then horizontals, they again counterintuitive. Instead of following the normal order of operations, you would do reverse order of operations. So you do the shifts first, then multiplication, and then parentheses. Um, and we'll see in the next example, it's a little counterintuitive. And then verticals, you would follow normal order operations, which is PEMDAS. So do anything inside parentheses first, multiplication, which is reflections and scalings, and then follow it up with the shifts. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have a example here where we go from the square root graph, which looks something like, and I'm just going to use 3 points. I know there's 0, 0, 0, or 1, 1, and then at 4 I'm up at positive 2. So my square root graph, and I'm going to label it as that, is right there. Okay, and now if I look at g of x, my final end product, I have a couple different things going on. I have one thing I have going on is a vertical stretch by 2, by a factor of 2. Okay, I also have a horizontal reflection with the minus sign. Okay, and then the last thing I have is a horizontal shift by -4. Okay, or I can say by 4 to the left. Okay, so okay, so now I have to decide in what order to do them in. In general, remember we said that you should try and do the horizontals first and the verticals last. So I'm going to put the vertical stretch last. And now I need to decide between these. Now, normally we would say that the horizontal shift should go first, okay, and then the horizontal reflection, right? But now we have to be careful here because we have parentheses. So here, the order of operations is multiplication and, well, there's two things going on. There's multiplication and parentheses. Reverse order of operations says that I first need to do I need to do multiplication before I do parentheses. So actually, I'm going to do the reflection first, and then I'll go inside the parentheses and follow it up with the horizontal shift. Okay. So, and again, with parentheses, you have to be a little bit careful. For verticals, again, it would be you have to do those first. Horizontal reflection. Now I'm going to write the equation in here, and when I do the horizontal reflection, that just changes the sign on x. So I'd have a minus x inside the parentheses, which is fine. That's just fine. And now graphically, I take all my points, and whatever the x value is, I just take the opposite sign. So it would go to, if it's at +1, it would go to -1. If it's at +4, it would go to -4. And now let's see if I can sketch this. Okay, and this would be square root of -x. Okay, now if I do a horizontal shift to the left by 4, the equation becomes square root of, and now I replace x, that minus sign stays there, by x plus 4. Okay, and so this would take all my points and move their x values to the left by 4. So this one would go over here, this point would go right over here, and then this last point, it's at 4, it would go all the way over to 9. So it would look something like this. So this would be the square root of minus parentheses x plus 4. Last one, hopefully. I think so, yeah. Is a vertical stretch by 2. So this says I take whatever my y value is and multiply it by 2. So this one doesn't change. That stays there. The y value here right now is +1. That multiplied by 2 goes up to +2. This one is out here at a y value of 2. That gets moved all the way up to 4. Okay, so my final graph, my graph of g of x, is right here. Okay, so again, a couple things to watch out for. I recommend doing the horizontals first. You can do the verticals first too. In general, it's easier, and you tend to make fewer mistakes if you do the horizontals first. And the other thing to watch out for is parentheses. They can be kind of misleading, and certainly another way you could have done this problem was to distribute the minus, and then you'd have a completely different, well, you wouldn't have a different, you may have a different order of the horizontals as a result, but you will end up with the same product. Okay, so just a quick review on transformations.